what is the church really about? It's not about some exclusive club. It's about an inclusive family. It's not about pastors getting rich. It's about being rich with grace. It's not about this denomination or that denomination, but putting Christ at the head of everything. And it's not about wearing the right clothes on Sunday morning. It's about clothing ourselves in His presence. And it's not even about Sunday morning in the first place. It's about every single day. Because the church is not about proving yourself. It's about accepting the one who's already been proved. It's not about justifying your behavior. It's about surrendering to the one who has already justified you. It's not about doing more right than wrong. It's about knowing the one who is good. It's not about the controversy we can stir up. It's about the love that came down. It's not about getting all your questions answered. It's about the freedom we have to ask the questions in the first place. And it's about the God who is always listening.
Well, good morning. So, for the past 2 weeks, we've been watching this video, which is going to have 4 parts for us. And it's going to be, we watched one part last week, we watched this part this week, we're going to watch another part next week, and then the last one, we're going to watch it all together. So it's a 3-part thing, and then on the 4th, we'll watch it all together. And it's kind of painting this picture of what is the church? What is the church really all about? And why do we gather here on Sunday mornings to worship this God, this man called Jesus? And we're asking these questions, why church? Last week we answered the question, who is the church? Is the church sinners or is the church saints? This week we're going to dive into a new question of what is the church? What is the church? Is the church friends or is the church family? Now, before we get there, we need to revisit our kind of discussion about the basis of the church. The basis of the church that Jesus asked the question, who do you say that I am? And we need to remember that we don't come to church on Sunday mornings to find friends. We don't come to Sunday morning to be a part of a family. That's not the primary goal of Sunday morning. It's not the primary goal of church. The primary goal of the church is to find and serve and live for Jesus. Now that is the primary goal of the church. And we have to remember that Jesus says, on this rock I will build my church. And that rock is the confession that Peter made that Jesus is the Christ. He's the Messiah, the Savior of the world. And more importantly than all of that, He's the Son of God. We have to keep that in the back of our minds, knowing that that is that. But then when we look at other things like sinners or saints, we look at friends or family, we have to remember that these are the natural progressions of what happens when we make that confession. So today we're asking the question, what is the church? Is the church a group of friends or is the church a family? Now, as I was preparing this message, and I know last week I said that, I struggled a little bit with the idea of sinners or saints because so much of what I talked about and studied and brought into my own life really kind of went against a lot of what I've been told or talked about. Now, if last week's sermon for me to prepare it was confusing, this one was downright muddy. Now, let me explain why. If I were to ask you, is the church friends or family? Or let's just take each individual word there, friends or family. Now, some of you already in your mind bring a lot of baggage to that discussion, particularly around the idea of family. Now, if I were to ask you about family, some of you have a very positive, connotation of family. Family is blood. That's, my family. I love my family. My mothers, my brothers, my sisters, my grandparents, my cousins. You love family. But to others, when I say family, immediately, maybe you think of a broken family. You think of a past hurts. You think of divorce in your family. You think of an abusive parent. You think of somebody who left you. You think of this concept of family as this weird kind of thing where I don't really know what to say about family. And when it comes to friends, you actually prefer your friends over what you consider to be your family. It's kind of this weird thing that we all bring different things to. And what it's going to come down to is some of you think of friends as less than family. Others, you think of friends as your family. And then others, you see family as the most important thing. So how you answer that question regarding family and what it looks like in your own life is going to depend on how you hear this message. So I have to kind of prepare you for that. I have to tell you that what we're going to be talking about today is that we want to look at the church as family, but not necessarily as you have come to understand family in your own life. We have to look at it as family as it was meant to be. And that's going to change some things for us. So we're asking the question, friends or family? So let's answer this question. What does it mean to be friends? Now, for me, when I hear the question, friends, I'm going to bring my own baggage to that because when I hear friends, I hear the voice of a 14-year-old girl looking me in the eyes and saying, I hope we can still be friends. It's your heartbreak right there. Because that's what I hear. That's what you say. You're dating a girl for a little while, and all of a sudden you think things are going well, and then she hits you with the bombshell. Starts with, let's talk. And then it goes to, it's not you, it's me. We need space. I hope we can still be friends. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's jaded me. If that's what friendship is, I don't want any part of that. I just got to say that. But for other people, friends is a very positive thing. You love your friends. Your friends is actually an escape from your family. You don't want to be with your family, so you go hang out with your friends. When you look through Scripture, it talks a lot about friends. When we talk about friends or family, we're not saying that friendship is a bad thing. I'm simply saying friendship is not enough. In Luke 7:34, Jesus is said to be a friend of sinners. Now, if you take that from last week, he's a friend to sinners. But he wants so much more than be a friend to sinners. He wants those sinners to make the transition into the family of God, which we'll talk about in a minute because the Bible talks about family in very specific terms. In James 2:23, we're told that Abraham, remember that sermon we talked about a few months ago? Wow, it's been a while. Abraham believed God, it was credited to him as righteousness, and Abraham was a friend of God. Now, there are other passages in the Old Testament that talk more in terms of family, but the Jewish person of Jesus' day wasn't quite ready to say, I am a member of the family of God. They weren't ready to make that jump. There was something about being considered God's son, or to be considered to be that you could say, Abba, Father, that you could call God Father. Something just didn't sit well with the Jewish mind of that day. So when Jesus comes in and says, when you pray like this, Our Father, that's uncomfortable. But Abraham was a friend of God. There's this other passage James goes on to talk about in chapter 4. He said, friendship with the world puts you at enmity with God. You see, we can't be both friends with God and friends with the world. To be friends with the world actually takes us away from God. Friendship is not enough in this context. And I'm going to think that many of you who think of your friends as the most important thing in your life, they actually are your family. You see, family, when we talk about family, a lot of us immediately think of biological family. We think of, our children. We think of our parents. We think of our brothers and our sisters. And that's true. That's a biological family. But family is so much more than blood in the biblical context. When we actually look at Scripture, when we actually go to the Bible and we talk about family, this word I keep seeing over and over and over again. It keeps popping up. And it's not the word family, but it's the word adoption. Now, when I think about adoption, I've known several of my people that I've known in the church, outside of the church, people who have been adopted. Now, an adopted child, the worst thing you can do is go up to their parents and say, is this your real kid or your adopted kid? It's just a terrible thing to say, because if they're adopted, they're actually family. They're actually blood. Now, if you go back to the biblical context of adoption, there's so much more to this, and it's so much more beautiful. You realize that in the Bible, in Jesus' day, you could have your own children, biologically produce your own children. Your children grow up, they disappoint you, and you can disown them entirely. Write them out of the will, out of that, they get nothing, and you can kick them out of the house and be done with them. But if you adopt somebody, if you invite somebody into your family through adoption, you can never disown them again. You can never disown them again. And I was looking at this and I thought, man, why could you never disown them again? Because when you adopt somebody into your family, you are asking them to give up everything that they had before you. You're asking them to give up their previous biological family. You're asking them to give up a previous life, and you're asking them to put everything in your family. And because you've asked them to give up everything, you can never take that away from them. You can never take that adoption away. Now, I want you to put that in the context of God's family. When God has adopted you, that's what the Bible talks about. It talks about when we accept Jesus Christ as our personal Savior, when we allow Him to come into our lives, we are adopted into the family of God. Galatians 4:4-7 talks about this in terms of we are adopted, which makes us sons and daughters of God, which makes us, and this is weird, and I had to read this a couple times, it makes us co-heirs with Christ. Now, if you think about an heir, if you think about a king has a son, that son is the heir to the throne. There's only one heir. One heir. He gets the throne unless he gives it up to a younger brother, which has happened. But this isn't just Jesus giving it up. No, He's inviting us to be co-heirs in the family of God. It's such this beautiful picture of what it means to be a part of the family of God. It's not about blood. It's not just about it's not about choosing to be in the family. It's about actually being a co-heir with Christ. Like Jesus and me are, in a sense, brothers. Jesus and you are brother and sister. It's this weird thing that happens in the family of God where we all become family. One of the things that we're looking at when we're asking about why church is we're actually looking at North Hills. We're looking at the context of North Hills, and we're looking at our values. We've established a few years ago what we at North Hills value. We value transformational living. We talked about that last week. The transformation day to day from sinner to saint. How we make the big transition from sinner to saint, but each and every day live in light of that transformation. Authentic relationships. Intimate conversations with God. Experiencing the presence of God. And humble hearts to serve. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is that when we think about family, family requires us to have authentic relationships. It's not just surface level. If we're going to be family, it's got to go deeper than friendship. It's got to go deeper than just saying hi. It's got to go deeper than all that. It involves, when we talk about authentic relationships involve being real with one another. That means that we need to be vulnerable with one another. That it's okay if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, how are you doing? That you have the freedom to say, I'm not okay. Rather than what we usually say, I'm blessed. I'm too blessed to be stressed. But we're okay. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. Authentic relationships require us to be real and vulnerable with one another. And that can only happen, that realness and that vulnerability can only happen in the context of family. When we talk about family, we're talking about this. You know, when I was growing up, my dad told me that friends come and go, but family is forever. But when it comes to the church, we take it a step further. Friends come and go, but family can be eternal. You see, when we are part of the family of God, our life doesn't end when we die. It goes on and carries on into eternity. So the relationships that we build as a family here on earth go on to eternity. And we make an eternal impact every time that we invite somebody into the family of God. The church can be eternal. We're in this anchor passage in Acts chapter 2, which is the basis of what we talk about when we talk about our values. We look at Acts chapter 2, and it shows us a picture of the early church. It shows us what they did. And while not everything that they did is something that we are required to do, it gives you a picture of what they thought the church was. Acts chapter 2, verse 44 through 45. It says, and all those who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number, day by day, those who were being saved. When we talk about the family of God, we have to understand one thing. And it kind of carries back over to your own families as well. And many of you who come from somewhat broken families, who come from somewhat painful experience when it comes to family, you recognize that the church is going to, at times, mirror the struggles that we have in our families. There is no perfect family. Moms and dads make mistakes. Kids make messes. You're going to have that weird uncle in the family that just shows up and embarrasses everybody. Everybody has somebody in their family who is a little off, who is a little strange, that if you see them in public, people are like, do you know that guy? I've never seen him in my life. And some of you might be thinking, okay, James, I got you there. There is nobody in my family that is weird or strange. And I'm going to say that if there's nobody in your family that you can think of that is weird or strange, I'm just saying, it might be you. I'm just going to say that. But family is messy. Family is muddy. Family, it's just, there's some things that you're going to have to deal with. There's some love that you're going to have to give. When I think about friends come and go. Well, family, you're stuck with. Even if it's biological family, you know, he's always going to be your uncle. And you're always going to be that family member. And that's just the reality of it. So we have to navigate the church, knowing that there's no perfect family, which must mean there's no perfect church. And in any church, there's going to be that person. And maybe you have that person in your mind, and if you do, I'll pray for you because that's sinful. That's going to be a little off. That's going to be a little strange. And these are people that I think of that they take a little extra grace. But you know what? That person is family, and they are part of our family. And we have to love them as such. So what is family? Well, there are three things that I think family is, and we're going to talk about each one of them, getting closer into Acts chapter 2. But the first thing, and I think this somehow should go without saying, but family eats together. One of the things that I absolutely loved as a kid was my family, my dad, my brother, we ate together at least 2 or 3 times a week. We gathered around a table, we prayed together, and we ate our food. But one of the things that I absolutely love and admire about my father is that my father had one standing rule, and that was we never had to ask permission to have somebody, a friend, over for dinner. There was always a place at my dad's table for our friends, and sometimes we had more friends around our family dining table than my dad, my brother, and I. Some of those people still think of my dad as the only father figure that they have. I remember growing up, I had this one friend who was a foster kid. And he was raised in, he had a great foster mom who took him in, who paid his expenses, paid his bills. But we became friends. We graduated high school together. But I can tell you that more nights than not, he was around our dinner table. My dad was the one that he came to for advice on life. He's still a part of our family to this day. 34 years old, still a part of our family today because my dad had this rule that anyone was allowed around our dinner table. And I love that, and I want that in my own life as well. I want my kids to have that. Family eats together, and who we eat with says a lot about us. If you only will eat with those people who are just like you, biologically related to you, I think you're missing out. Later on in the book of Acts, you actually find this. There's this rule in the Jewish law that says that Jews were not allowed to eat with Gentiles. But God said, no, the church is made up of Jews and Gentiles, which means Jewish people can eat with Gentile people, but somewhere along the line, they somehow got it in their minds they couldn't eat with people that weren't just like them. And all of a sudden, you have a division in the church. You see, the church is messy. And these issues have to be dealt with, and they dealt with them. And they got back to the basics. They got back to the point where they said, no, we are all a family. We can all eat together. When you look at Acts chapter 2, verse 46, it says, and day by day, attending the temple together, breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. There's something spiritual about eating together. That's why I think church is one of the things we're really, really good at is food. We're really, really good at doing potlucks and everybody bringing a little bit for everybody else to kind of come together. But I think sometimes we kind of limit our food and our eating together with those people that we already kind of consider our family. But what about the outside world? What about the other people? What about having a chair at the table for people that don't yet belong to the family of God? Can we make room at the table of God for sinners, as we talked about last week? People who need to come know Jesus. We are responsible for inviting them. And I want you all to know right now, just as my dad had this rule that we never had to ask permission to invite somebody over for dinner, you never have to ask permission from anybody to invite somebody to church. I was always amazed when I was a youth pastor for many years, all the kids who would come to me and say, Pastor James, can I invite a friend? And I had to remind them over and over and over again, you never have to ask that question. They are always invited. Because family eats together. Family, when you get around a dinner table, family prays together. Family asks questions about their day. Do you want to know why I think that the family in America is dying? It's because families have gotten so busy they don't have time to eat together anymore. Make the time to eat together, to talk around a table. But then we move on to the next one, too, because this is one of the things that I think we miss a lot, particularly in the church. We get this a little bit when it comes to our biological family or people that we kind of like. Families struggle together. Now, if you go back to Acts chapter 2, verse 44 through 45, I told you that I was going to skip these passages last week, and some of you may be, why is he skipping passages? Well, the reason I skipped those last week is because I don't want to talk about Acts chapter 2, 44 through 45, and just throw them out there and leave them without explaining what was happening in the church during that time. It says, and all those who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. Now, a lot of times people will read this and be like, the church was meant to be communist, where everybody kind of just gives up everything, throws it in the pool, and then the pastors and the leaders of the church decide who gets what. But you have to understand what was going on in that time period. You see, in our culture today, if we want to come to church, if we want to give our lives to Jesus, if we want to get baptized, we are free to do that. We live in a free country. And outside of certain cultures, you're not going to get disowned from your family for making that decision. But during this time period, it wasn't the same. To accept Jesus, to get baptized, was to turn your back on your family. So these people were giving their lives to Jesus and getting kicked out of their houses. Wives were giving their lives to Jesus and being divorced by their husbands. Children were being disowned. Everybody was kind of like in this situation where to follow Jesus meant giving up everything. So all of a sudden, that first day, all of these people give their lives to Jesus. They turn their back on their families and their past, and all of a sudden now you have the disciples looking around at all these people who have nowhere else to go, showed up at their doorstep and said, we have chosen to follow Jesus. And everybody celebrates. But now it gets to the question, all right, now what? How are we going to take care of all these people? They got nowhere to go. They don't have any food. They got no shelter. What are we going to do? And the church in that time period decided, we're a family. We will do whatever's necessary to make sure the family of God is taken care of. So the natural response in that time period was for everybody to just kind of ante up and give everything to the church and make sure that everyone was taken care of. Because it was a struggle. It was a struggle just to get by back then. Not only was it not a few years before Paul, who was a part of the church later, was breathing threats against the church and threatening to take these people and throw them into jail. It was a struggle to be a Christian then. It was a struggle, but they did it because they loved Jesus and they served Jesus, and all of a sudden they have a family. Children, moms, dads, brothers and sisters, all of a sudden family is more than just biology. Family is more than just being a Jewish person. It's more than being a Gentile. Now all of a sudden in the church you have people from every tongue, tribe, nation. You have freed people, slaves. You have women, men, everybody together, the family of God. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to take care of everybody? People are struggling. They're hurting. They're wondering, did I make the right decision? That's the context of people giving away everything. Jesus isn't necessarily asking us as a church to give away everything, pull it together, and let the church decide who gets what. But he could. We're entering into a time in our country, in our history, where it is very, very tough to be a Christian. We're entering into a time where it's going to be a struggle to stand up for Christ. People are going to ridicule you. They're going to put you down. Where will you turn to struggle? Sometimes your family is the people that are saying, why do you believe that? Why do you worship a fairy tale? Why do you go hang out with those people? Why do you, and I hear this one over and over again, why do you choose your church over your own family? Is the church family a place where we can come and struggle together? Where we can bear one another's burdens? Where we can look out for one another, care for them, pray for them? That's the goal. It's about eating together. It's about struggling together. But when families eat together, when families struggle together, and the outside world looks in and they see that, the natural thing to do is to grow and to grow together. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read about Pentecost, and I think that first day, 3,000 people added to the church in a single day. 3,000 people added to the family of God that first day. Do you think that might have caused some problems? You think that might have caused some stress on the leaders? I just want you to imagine this. Next Sunday, you roll up to church at 10 o'clock. Every parking spot is full. You walk in here, every single seat in this room is full. Where are you going to sit? Where are you going to park? We like to think, oh, that's an awesome idea. We love that. Let's grow our church to be that big. But it brings its own challenges. But I can promise you this. When they grew to 3,000 that first day, I don't think any of those disciples were standing around saying, send them all away. Or ever regretting that 3,000 people came. You know what they did? They rolled up their sleeves and they got to work and they handled their business. They took care of the people that came to them. And you know what happened? It wasn't just 3,000 and then that's it. They continued to grow. They continued to grow day by day as they gathered together, as they ate together, as they bore one another's burdens. And not only were they growing numerically, they were growing spiritually. And within a few hundred years, they had grown to several 100,000, maybe millions, to today, where we have 200 million Christians in the world. All started with people that said, it is okay to grow. But there are some people in the church who look at that and think, I don't want a church that big. I don't want to come to church and not be able to find a parking spot. I like the family feel of my church. Because having a bigger church, and I'm not saying that that's the goal to have a bigger church, but the goal is to spread the gospel. And I think when you spread the gospel, you're going to grow. So when you grow, what do you do with those people? You have to learn to adjust to that. When I was thinking about this, I started thinking about when Amanda and I first got married. Now, I'm going to tell you something about me right now and us that you might think, man, that's really weird, but whatever. When Amanda and I first got married, we decided together that we would never have children. There were a lot of different reasons why we kind of decided that, but we just kind of said, you know what? We didn't feel equipped. We didn't feel like we'd be good parents. So we just said, let's not have kids. Let's live this life together. We'll support and encourage one another. We'll be able to do anything we want to do. You know, I remember we were married 5 years before Mia came along. We just decided, hey, one weekend, let's go to Yosemite. We packed up, our vehicle, our tent. We went out to Yosemite. We could do that. There was freedom in that. And we thought maybe if we had children that would somehow inconvenience us. But I remember one day we were just 5 years in and we're thinking to ourselves like, I love you, I love you too. But something was missing. We realized that there was something missing. And we started praying about it and asking it. God did a work in our hearts. And we started saying, you know what? I think I want to have kids. So 3 weeks later, Amanda found out she was pregnant. The rest is kind of history. And you know what? I will tell you this 100%. Having kids is somewhat of an inconvenience. You can't do all the things you want to do anymore. You can't just pack up and leave and go wherever you want to go. Going out to dinner is a task in and of itself. If you have kids, it is even crazier. We had to get a bigger, we're thinking now we need a bigger car. Because not only do you have children who have car seats that are big, they have a lot of stuff that comes with them. Toys, diaper bags, all this stuff that comes together. Having children complicates your life. Growing your family complicates your life. But I will tell you this 100%. 4.5 years ago, Amanda and I decided, let's have kids. And we did. And it was challenging. But I will tell you this, not once in the past 4.5 years would I look at Mia or Emily and say, man, I wish I'd never had them. That sounds ridiculous to think about that, but a lot of times, sometimes, we think about growing our family. We think about the inconveniences that might come, but I don't think I've ever met anybody who regrets their children. And when it comes to the church, I don't think churches that grow like this early church, who grew to 3,000 in a single day, ever regretted sharing the gospel. Whoever regretted rolling up their sleeves, putting in the work, whoever regretted maybe going without a little so somebody else could be served. But there's growing pains. When you have children, you go through sleepless nights. The mom actually in the beginning has the most pain because she has to kind of go through the 9 months plus that, 4 to 24 hours depending. There's a lot that goes into that. But then after it, you got to navigate your life. You got to rearrange your life. And when the church grows, you have to rearrange your church. You have to give up a little bit of that freedom. Growing together is a challenge. But you have to do it. Come back to North Hills. We think about North Hills. We think about this organization. We think about what we do on Sunday mornings. We think about the preschool that meets throughout the week, sharing the gospel with children from all over our area. And when you share the gospel with children, hopefully you're reaching their parents as well. Think about our school that goes from kindergarten through 12th grade. All of these people are our family. That is the family of God. And we're responsible for all of them. Not just who meets in here on Sunday mornings, but who meets Monday through Friday, the events that happen here on Saturday. Just think about this. If family is not more than Sunday, it's not family. Because family is always more than Sunday. We don't come together and say, okay, Sunday morning you're my family, Monday I don't care about you. We would never say that because family's more than Sunday. Family's more than one day a week. We don't just bear one another's burdens on Sunday where we come and say, man, I'm really struggling. I will pray for you. But we pray for them through the week. Family is more than Sunday. And we have to remember that. Like I said earlier, friends come and go. But our family, our church family, the family of God, not just those who meet here, but those who meet across churches, across Vallejo, across California, across the United States, across the world, all of that is the family of God. It's one of the reasons why when we come across other Christians, we immediately think, well, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian. But how do we know that if we don't ever ask? Family's more than Sunday. Family is more than just what we do here. It's bearing one another's burdens. It's eating together through the week. When's the last time you invited somebody from North Hills over for dinner to sit around your table? Is there room around your table? struggle together? Do you struggle with other people? Do you look at other people and think to yourself, man, I could really use a shoulder to cry on. I could really use a shoulder to lean on. Can you find that shoulder here? Or can somebody find you to struggle with? And then we grow together. We grow numerically when we're sharing the gospel, but not just sharing them. Like I said last week, we don't just baptize people as the end goal, but we lead people to Jesus knowing that we're helping them grow transformationally every single day, because it is more than just baptism. It's a life. It's a life transformationally living each and every day, authentic relationships. So as we go to reflect on this, I want you to think about this question. How would our North Hills experience, I'm talking about here on Sunday morning, the preschool through the week, the school through the week, how would our North Hills experience be different if we treated each other as family? How would it be different? I think the first question you should probably ask yourself is, do I think of North Hills as family? Or is this just friends? Friends I come to be a part of? Is this your family? If it's not, why not? If it is, how can you be a better family member? And maybe you're sitting there today and you're thinking to yourself, I don't believe anything you are saying about Jesus. I don't believe that he is the Son of God, but when you say family, I am looking for a place to belong. And I can tell you right now, there is a place here that you can belong. Even before you believe, there is a chair at the table for you. Maybe you are ready. You say, you know what? I want to be a part of the family of God. Let us help you. Right now, during this reflection time, some of the band members are going to come up. They're going to play some music. I'll be down here praying. Maybe you just want to come up and say, I want to join the family of God. We'd love to help you. We'd love to baptize you. We'd love to help you make that transition from sinner to saint and welcome you into our family, because it is all about family. And you can forget about the baggage that you had from your own family and the brokenness. We're not promising it's going to be perfect, but we promise that we are family. So as we come together, think about that question. How would our North Hills experience be different if we treated each other as family? And as the band plays, you reflect on this.